Can't hear you, so you could be yelling at me. I don't know it.
How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing!
Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
The people dreamed this country, and it's the people who are making America great again. Making black new.
Hello, friends. Happy belated Easter Resurrection Sunday, and welcome to the Audit the Vote weekly podcast. I am your host, Tony Shoup. We have a very interesting, we'll call it interesting and revealing show planned for you tonight. But before we get into all the down and dirty, like, share, and subscribe to our channel so that we can start getting the word out bigger, better, and faster than ever before. And hit the bell so that you get notified when we go live. We are starting to put out more and more content, and our message is going to get more and more important as the weeks roll more into the Trump administration that we're watching destroy the deep state, and I'm enjoying every single minute of it. So that being said, my very first promotion, we're going to talk about a couple of things before I bring in my special guest. Tonight's going to be kind of different and a little bit. Let's just put it to you this way. If you are a diehard Scott Presler fan, prepare to be offended. We'll just say it that way. My next Constitution class, though, before we get to offending people, which is not really my favorite thing to do, but needs done in this case, and we will explain why. My next Constitution class is going to be Thursday night on May 1st, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to Eastern Daylight Time, EDT. I have one follower, Ellen. If she's on here, she calls me out every time I screw it up. Hopefully they can get a bill written so we actually don't have to change the time zones. But until then, Foundations of Freedom is going to start 8 p.m. EDT on May 1st. You can register for free using that QR code. If you do not know the 5 freedoms in the First Amendment, if you can't name them off the top of your head, or you can't name, and I shouldn't say or, and you don't know the 3 branches of government, you need to be in this class. This is what sparked everything for me and our team in Pennsylvania and us. I did not do this by myself. My co-founder of Audit the Vote, Karen Taylor, and I took this class together in the fall of 2020, not this class, but a Patriot Academy Constitution class. And this particular one, I've actually never done before. It's a wall builders course. It's got Glenn Beck, Dr. Carol McSwain. I think I'm saying that right, McSwain. Maybe it's just Carol Swain. Forgive me. David Barton, Rick Green, all the usual heavy hitters, but I'm looking forward to hearing from Glenn Beck and experiencing this class for the first time. And I would like to invite each and every one of you to experience it for the first time with me. Thursday, 8 p.m., May 1st, scan a QR code, sign up now, and we are going to have a great time learning about the Constitution together, fellowshipping, and building community. Rick Green at Patriot Academy says all the time, there's 3 basic things we have to do to take this republic back. Well, to continue, we've rescued the republic. Now we have to rebuild the republic. We've rescued it by a shred, I would argue, a tiny shred. Trump winning in November we won the coin toss. Now the game is starting. It is not time to slow down. It is not time to stop. It is time to pedal to the metal, shoulder to the wheel, as Steve Bannon says, hit the gas. But what do we do? Well, number one, if you're a Christian, and it's okay if you're not, but I am, I recommend saturating yourself in God's word. The Founder's Bible is a great resource that will not just fill you with God's word, but also give you historical context on our founders and how they use the Bible to weave the fabric of our nation together. So saturating yourself in the word of God. Number 2 is we build community. And that's what everybody is doing, hopefully, that is watching this podcast on somewhat of a weekly, monthly basis with fellow patriots, because we lost this country not overnight, but because we stopped knowing who our neighbors were and we stopped connecting with people like face to face, and we just started watching screens and, oh my gosh, the phone, and we lost the country. We have to get back to building community. And then the last thing is what we call at Patriot Academy, tend the garden. And that means that what area of the culture are you supposed to go out into to impact? Are you supposed to run for office? Are you supposed to carry your faith in government into business? Are you supposed to get into entertainment? Are you a church person? Are you a pastor? Are you supposed to serve in church? What are you called to do so that you can help push back on this woke agenda and change the culture for the better, all for posterity's sake, for the next generation? And voila, this class is one of, if not the best way to do it. Of course, I'm biased, Patriot Academy curriculum. And you could argue and say, well, they write your paycheck, but I will argue back and say, well, they write my paycheck because I was doing such a good job promoting them in the first place. They said, well, you work for me, and I needed a job after the country fell apart. And so, yeah, I said, sure. So I've been on staff with them since April of 2023. Enough of that, though. Pull that flyer out, Joel. Maybe we can share it again a little bit later. I want to tell you guys a little bit about my weekend because it was really cool. I encourage everybody to look at doing this at some point. Of course, my audience knows I've become a crazy history buff. I never paid attention to it in high school. I can't even really blame the teachers because I just don't remember, but it was just not my thing until the COVID crackdowns. And finally, when government overreach hit my front door, I became incredibly interested in history. And so this past weekend, we had the honor and privilege to travel with the Green family up to Lexington, Massachusetts for a reenactment of Paul Revere's Midnight Ride on April 19th, well, technically 18th/19th, because it was the 250th anniversary. Yes, that is correct. Paul Revere rode on that horse and said, the regulars are out, call to arms, 250 years ago in April of 1775. So this was a big anniversary. Of course, we're going into July 4th, 2026 is going to be the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. But you start thinking, wait a minute, they fired the first shot, and the shot heard around the world, by the way, was fired the next day, also on the Lexington Green in like a normal neighborhood. I can't tell you how much context this helped me build in my head of how history came together. Being there and watching that reenactment, which is something I thought was so insane. 5 years ago, I would have never gone to a historical reenactment. And here I am geeking out with my kids in the middle of the night in the dark. We can barely see, but we're hearing a guy on horseback going, the regulars are out. And it was just so cool. But so the shot heard around the world was in like a normal neighborhood. I used to ask everyone when I first started waking up and studying, like, okay, if you say we're going to end up in a civil war, what does that look like? I have no concept of what that looks like. I kind of get it now. It's just neighborhood to neighborhood. The British basically came with 800 soldiers they were traveling to Concord, Massachusetts. Sorry for the history lesson. Then we'll get our special guest and have some fun offending people. They were traveling to Concord because they wanted to get the ammunition from the the rebels, if you will, Sam Adams, John Hancock, Pastor Jonas Clark. They wanted to confiscate their weapons so that they could control them, essentially. And they were on their way to Concord, 77 men, because Paul Revere rode on that horse and said the regulars are out, and the American colonists had been organizing, building community in the taverns. That night, 77 of them got together overnight, got out of their bed. Think about it. Like, how many of us, like, my kids aren't babies anymore. They sleep through the night. When I have to do something in the middle of the night now, I'm like, how did I do this? For months for my first one and years for the other two, I have no idea. somehow I did. Got up in the middle of the night, got themselves armed, and in the morning, 800 British troops, 77 American colonists versus 800 British troops. Debates over who fired first. Patriot Academy would tell you that they think the British fired first. That's not really my fight, but 8 American colonists were killed from that shot heard around the world. And the rest of them scattered and fled to warn more people. And by the time the British kept going to Concord, the next town over, essentially, hundreds of Minutemen, that's what they called the American colonists, the militia, hundreds of Minutemen had gathered in the early morning hours to defend their homeland. And that is what pushed the resistance. It pushed the British back. And the Declaration of Independence wasn't even signed for over a year after that. So just think about that. Put it into context. And when you're getting battle weary on this crazy journey that we've all been on, I think that my special guest is also new to politics since the COVID pandemic. We'll get into his background a little bit here when I pull him in, but you're on this crazy journey and you need a little bit of a pick-me-up or encouragement. You can always count on Audit the Vote and Tony Shoup to bring you some of that. So I hope that that story encouraged you tonight. And I want to introduce you. This is a new friend for me, Brian Ference, who is the host of the MAGA Podcast. He is an author and a political activist, very active on the ground in Arizona, from what I understand. We connected because my data guy found him after the Lancaster race in Pennsylvania. District 36 seat went completely south. And Scott Presler, unfortunately, started blaming the voters and saying that I can't do all the work myself. My data guy did a bunch of work and basically showed and proved. And there's videos on our social medias that you can go back and look. In fact, there's one pinned on our X feed. I did it. It's less than 5 minutes. It will explain to you why early voting is bad and why chasing low propensity mail ballots is a losing strategy. And we can prove it now with multiple races, but most recently through this Lancaster race, in that the NGOs are targeting low propensity voters because they can flip their votes easier. And then they're basically chasing their ballots. Because in this race we just had in Lancaster, all the Republicans that returned mail ballots did not vote for the Republican candidate. And it's plain as day in the data. You can't dispute it, essentially. And so my data guy was trying to get this out, and he connected Brian with you. So Joel, go ahead and pull Brian in. This is Brian Ference. He connected with Brian Ference on Twitter. You got to connect with this guy because he's spitting truth, and you need to connect with him and get our data to him. And I guess the rest, Brian, is history. We connected, and you had me on your MAGA. Was it the MAGA podcast you had me on?
It was the MAGA podcast, yes.
Okay. You had me on the MAGA podcast, and I feel like my life has had several pivots, and I feel like since then I've pivoted yet again in a way that I didn't expect or see coming. Not in a bad way. It's just I had these inklings that maybe Scott Presler wasn't doing the right things, or maybe not in this for the right reasons. Not really. I still have a lot of questions. But when I started connecting with Brian and some others that have had either been doing deep dives into his work or interviewing people that have worked with him in person, it's becoming glaringly obvious to us that there is something very wrong. And I would just urge you. So I know my audience is probably half and half. You might be watching this thinking you love him. And if you you might have worked for him for his early vote action and done some really good, honest, hard work on the ground. I would just say, take a deep breath. What Brian's going to share might shock you. Try not to let it offend you and look at it with an open mind, because from one sincere patriot to another, I'm telling you something is wrong. Something is horribly awry, and I don't have all the answers, but I am going to share some stories with you and someday maybe we'll even get into some data. And now a lot of you might start hitting the chat. I already see Scott slithered into Bucks County. I have heard more bad than good at this point. And let me also say this too. Nobody's perfect. So if you talk to people on the ground in Pennsylvania, I'm sure you'll find a handful of them that aren't crazy about me, that would have something bad to say about me. But by and large, the consensus, I think, is pretty good. And Brian's probably the same. Probably the same in Arizona. When you start talking to the majority of people that have worked with someone and they all are kind of sharing the same thing, that's when the red flags go up. So I don't want to paint this picture that Brian and I are both, which is my husband's name too, first name. And I don't call him that. I call him Shoup, but this is weird to have someone on my podcast. You're the first Brian I think I've had on the podcast. So I don't want to paint this picture that we're perfect individuals and then we've got it all figured out and you'll never hear bad things said about us, because that's probably not the case. We're faulty just like everyone else. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory. But by and large, people that work with us, or I should say work with me, Brian, I don't want to speak for you, but work with me will tell you I'm an upstanding citizen, very honest, authentic, and I'd like to think easy to work with. Probably not all the time. Joel, don't ask Joel. Most of the time, pretty easy to work with. So with that, Brian, just do like a quick, Penny, you just haven't asked the right people. I'll connect you. Do a quick overview of your background, because my audience probably, unless they're following you, which is probably rare, they don't know you. So just give us your background. How'd you get involved in politics? Where do you live? And what are you doing?
Sure. Thank you, Tony. And thanks again for having me on your show. So again, my name is Brian Ference. You can follow me at brianference.com or on X at brianference1. And just to kind of, give a brief overview into my background. So I really didn't get active in politics until 2020, when the 2020 election was stolen. I do live in Arizona, in Maricopa County, or as we call it, Corruption County.
Okay, wait, let me interject for 2 seconds. So here's the litmus test number 1. If somebody does not think 2020 was stolen, red flag right away. If they are not willing to say it out loud, red flag number 2. Brian, back to you.
Yes. I agree with you. That's right. So, I mean, it definitely was clearly stolen. I remember, like many people, watching, the election results, in the evening and just seeing, vote numbers switch and the race flip, and just a lot of just crazy stuff. There's been a lot of research into the data. Of course, we did do an audit in Maricopa County. Not all the data was actually released as part of that audit, but we've seen just so much corruption, so much gaslighting from our former supposedly Republican recorder, Stephen Richer, who's now out. But we still have the Maricopa Board of Supervisors, unfortunately, is still very corrupt. A lot of problems there. So, I kind of got involved at that point, realizing that the election was stolen, watching the audit happen. And then, of course, with, COVID-19, which I came to realize was, just basically a psyop. I mean, yes, people died, but the reality is they were murdered. I mean, the governor of New York literally murdered like 30,000, grandmas and grandpas, and they were murdered. You say
murdered, Brian, is that because we know, you think they knew what they were doing when they sent the old folks in the nursing homes?
Well, let me explain that. So, yes, for example, in New York, they would bring COVID positive patients into the hospital, not give them, I mean, of course, they couldn't give them ivermectin because it's such a dangerous, evil substance. They couldn't give them that.
Or hydroxychloroquine.
And they would administer remdesivir to them, which is proven to cause organ failure in about 50% of the people that take it. And then they would put them on a ventilator, and the ventilators, 80% or more that went on the ventilators died. I mean, it's like a death sentence. But aside from that, they would bring some of them into the hospital, COVID positive, and then they would send them back out of the hospital, saying, no, we don't want you here. Go back into the nursing home and spread this. It was a disease. If you look at the whitehouse.gov website, it talks about what is the origin of it. And it mentions that it originated in a Wuhan, China lab, and it is man-made. It does not exist in nature.
Finally.
Yeah, I think there's a short link for it, but it's on the whitehouse.gov site. So, there was this disease that if it wasn't treated early with, zinc, vitamin D, there was different early treatments that worked that prevented you from developing these low dropping oxygen levels and pneumonia-like symptoms, where you became very critical and serious if they had been given those early treatments. But instead, they were brought into the hospitals, and the hospitals were well compensated to give them remdesivir, to put them on the ventilator. And then when any patient died, they were extremely well compensated. And whether they had other conditions or not, that death certificate always said COVID-19 on it.
Yep.
So, what we saw was murder. It was the governor through his executive orders and, the medical staff through their compensation of these, medicines that didn't work, that caused organ failure. So everyone panicked because, oh no, 30,000 people are dying in New York. And that would cause you to panic. And it did for me too. I mean, it was like, this is crazy. This is a real thing. But they were murdered. It was all a lie. So
you think we're going to see accountability for that? I'm very frustrated that we haven't seen any accountability yet.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. President Trump put out a release that the auto pen pardons that Joe Biden put out were null and void because they were identical. He had no knowledge of them. So Fauci and all those individuals that were pardoned, including Biden's family, by that auto pen, those are null and void pardons. So absolutely, Fauci should be arrested for genocide, and a grand tribunal should be held, and the appropriate consequence for that. So that absolutely should happen. Whether or not it will, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, well. I understand that there's a number of civil lawsuits that are going forward, and there's been some court rulings against Pfizer, against Moderna, that, they basically falsified their safety testing. And in order to get approval, emergency approval of those vaccines, and you know what, when you falsify data and you falsify safety data, that's fraud. And you're no longer protected under, the Vaccine Act or whatever it is. You are liable for that fraud. They knew, for example, that if a pregnant woman took the COVID-19 vaccine while she was pregnant, in the safety testing, a large portion of those women lost the child. The baby died, was aborted, was murdered, and they hid that information. They knew it was happening. They recommended it for pregnant women. That absolutely is murder, and it's through fraud, and they should be held accountable. Anyways, we got off to a rough start there with the COVID.
Sorry,
but
we need to never forget what our government did. That's, I think, what they're trying to do is just move on and sweep it under the rug, and we can't forget, because we have to stay in this fight. It's a long-term battle. I know I could go. You will have to have you back multiple times to really unpack a bunch of stuff, because the next thing you said was the Maricopa County audit, which I was following. No one knew me yet. Audit the Vote was not. It was a petition when the Maricopa County audit was going on. I believe it was May of 2021 when the results actually came out. I remember where I was in my car when it dropped. That it was. I know it was chaos. And we were trying to bring that to Pennsylvania. That was our hope. We were hoping that Maricopa did such a stellar job that we were going to bring that. That was our petition effort. Let's bring that to Pennsylvania, and we'll finally get some answers. And of course, that went completely south. But I didn't even realize, like, you're in the belly of the beast right there. I thought Pennsylvania is bad. It sounds like Arizona is equally as bad. So holy cow, we're gonna have to have you back on so that we can unpack a little bit more of this. But you were not, so you weren't active before 2020, before COVID.
So with the election being stolen, and then the audit, and then the COVID scam, I just started saying, like, this is all a scam. Like, what is going on? What is happening?
That was me.
So I became involved. It was actually my wife's idea, which I think she regrets that now, but she said, why don't you get involved in politics and try to do something, try to change something? I said, okay, let me do that. So I became a precinct committeeman. I don't know if you have those.
Yes, we do. I am one as well.
All right. So I became a precinct committeeman.
Committee woman, not committee person. We're not going to go that route.
Right. Well, yes. As long as you know what a man and a woman is, then
and a woman.
So I became a precinct committeeman, and then shortly after that, I was in that game for a little bit, and I saw, wow, this is pretty corrupt. What's going on here? Because there was a lot of Republicans who were really not Republicans. They were Democrats pretending to be Republicans, and they were running cover for all the legislature that was saying, oh no, there was no fraud. We don't need to look at this. Everything's fine. We're not going to pass any laws on election integrity or, voter ID or anything. And, if you said anything to criticize the legislature, these rhinos, Republican in name only, they would attack other, fellow Republicans just viciously, like more than they ever attacked a Democrat ever. So that was my first introduction to politics. And in Arizona at the time, it was hidden that what this precinct committeeman is. They didn't want anyone to know what it was. They said, only their friends were in it. They had, unlimited proxies at the time. They would run everything through. It was controlled really by the John McCain machine for about 13 years in Arizona, and they, with an iron fist, controlled the AZ GOP, and the Republican Party in Arizona was controlled. We started making inroads. I got elected as the Maricopa County member at large, and then I won't say that it was only me, because other people certainly helped, but I was very influential.
Credit when we give credit where credit's due. We don't steal it.
I was very influential in exposing the current Rhino GOP chairwoman of the county, and then I basically got her to say she wasn't going to run again just by exposing her corruption publicly, and then we ran. Well, in my race when I was elected, there was a number of members at large that were elected, so we kind of gained more voting power on that board. We were able to do more. Then I helped run additional slate, and we basically took over that county board with grassroots, like true MAGA Donald Trump Republicans. Most of the people that were in there, they didn't want Trump. They wanted, DeSantis or anyone else.
Familiar?
Yeah.
That sounds so familiar.
It does sound familiar. So we kicked them all out. And then, in my legislative district, which we have a county and then a smaller legislative district. My legislative district is Legislative District 3. Shout out to them. And we're actually the largest legislative district in Arizona. I think the second largest in the country. And the rhinos want to control that district bad. I mean, bad. So we had a huge fight over control of that district, because we wanted these rhinos out that, their goal was don't change anything, protect the status quo, protect the system, they wouldn't do anything. Any kind of fundraising or any kind of like door knocking or flyers or, getting, new representatives. They didn't want any of that. So that was a real battle. I gained a lot of experience about exposing rhinos over that time. And then, I've always been a Republican, always been a Trump supporter. My whole life, I've been registered Republican, always voted Republican, never donated to a Democrat ever. I don't get paid 1 cent.
Did you vote in every election? Or did you vote in I didn't even know what a primary was.
Probably because in my life, I was raising a family and kids. Probably I missed some primary elections, but I believe I voted in every general election, and I always voted Republicans. Although I regret some of those Bush votes, those were. Of course, I wish I could take those back.
Compare that to now. Let me ask you, when's your next primary?
Let's see. Let me think about this. So in Arizona, we're going to have an election in a year and a half for governor, secretary of state, and attorney general. So we'll have a primary before. It's usually the summertime, like in June or July before that.
So you don't have one coming up soon. Like we have one on May 20th in Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's really soon. That's really soon.
So you don't have.
I don't think we have one that soon.
Okay, so I can't fault you because you don't have one coming up. But let me ask you this: will you ever miss a primary again?
No, I'll never miss a primary again. And the reason why is because what the elites and the establishment does is they handpick who is going to be the candidate, and they just tell everyone. They said it's endorsed by all these legislators. This is the candidate. Everyone get behind them. We don't even want to hear about any other candidates. And that's not going to fly anymore. We're uniting the legislative districts, the counties, and we're saying we are going to pick the candidates. We're going to get them signatures. We're going to get them donations. We're not going to allow the elites and the legislator buddies to pick some rhino candidate anymore. It's not going to fly.
Brian, you are in such good company, and I just have to chat. Liz Deal, great to see you, Bucks County Patriot. Carol, I have to explain to you guys, Carol, Otter Tail County Veritas on there. She's one of our Constitution coaches with Patriot Academy, and she's actually our coach mentor for the state of Minnesota. So if you're in Minnesota and you can't name the 5 freedoms in the First Amendment or the 3 branches of government, I need to get you connected with Carol. It's so great to have you on here. But she is literally seeing, I mean, as we're both telling these stories, you're talking about Arizona, you could easily just slip in Pennsylvania. I know that she's thinking, yep, Minnesota, we're in the same boat. And all my Pennsylvania people on here are like, oh my gosh, we've seen the exact same thing. So right. You are in good company, my friend. And thank you so much for getting active. You are, my work with Patriot Academy as their ambassador for the East Coast is just to go around and literally highlight people just like you. Because my saying is education is key and the fix is local. And we all have to do our part and get involved. And I love that we connected and we're on opposite sides of the country, but you're kicking butt in Arizona and I'm out here in Pennsylvania. And we are here tonight to get to the juicy topic, which I could talk to Brian. We could definitely have to have you back on here. We could talk about a bunch of different things and go a bunch of different directions, but I know that we advertise this as a certain thing and I want to make sure we deliver that for our audience. And so we are here tonight because we want to talk about something kind of difficult that I've been skirting around for a while because I don't like disparaging anybody that is on our side of the aisle. I like what one of my fellow patriots, Dr. Doug Frank, says is that if your guns are aimed at the enemy, I'm not shooting at you, but that doesn't mean I'm jumping in the foxhole with you either. And so I took that approach, and this is not something that I really wanted to do, but the more I study and the more people that I talk to, we have to talk about this. And so again, I preface this where if you're a huge Scott Presler fan, or if you worked really hard for early vote action on the ground, please don't take offense to this. I'm in no way saying that your work was useless or that you didn't do a good job. I just want to tell you a little bit about my experience with Mr. Presler. And then Brian has done tremendous research and a deep dive, and he's going to give you some more meat and some more perspective. You all know my story that are following this channel. And by the way, share this, please, because we have to, and I'd like to say gently, we have to get the word out about this because it's quite possible. Yes, share. I don't know if he's necessarily deep state plant. I don't know if he's just a media hound. It looks like he wanted to be an actor and maybe using his political platform to fulfill some I don't know what you say, but that's what it looks like. But I don't know. What I do know is we can't have somebody in the MAGA movement running around saying we got to do one thing to win when they know that it's not good. And that's what everything is pointing to at this point. So I connected with Mr. Presler, or I should say my co-founder connected with him in early April 2021. We had just started our petition for the forensic audit in Pennsylvania. Like we just talked, Maricopa, we were watching Maricopa. We're like, yeah, we're going to do what Maricopa does, expose the fraud. I'm going back to my life. Legislators, do your job, dig into this, fix this mess, put Trump back in the White House, and I'm going to go back to being a mom. That's what I thought I was embarking on when my co-founder, Karen Taylor, connected with Mr. Presler and said, hey, we had started rumblings hearing about his name and said, hey, would you support, we've heard we should talk to you, that we're really working on a mission and we're new in politics and that you've got a good following and presence here in Pennsylvania. And we just want to know if you would get some support for our petition. We feel like something went wrong and would you support us? Would you sign it? Would you share it? And he was very matter of fact with her and said, I am not looking back. I have no interest in an audit. I have no interest in looking in the past. I am moving forward. I am registering voters. Thanks, but no thanks. Never signed the petition, never shared it with anybody. And from my vantage point, essentially disappeared from our state. I know he didn't technically disappear, but he wasn't on the ground with us that whole time, really doing much of anything that I could see. And I didn't think at the time, I just didn't really think anything of it. I thought, all right, we need voters to without voter registration. We don't have people to cast ballots. So why would I poo-poo that? I would never poo-poo that. So we just kind of went separate directions. From my vantage point, again, this is from my vantage point, he didn't really resurface in Pennsylvania again until shortly before the 2024 election. Now, I know it looks like he formed early vote action in 2022. And if you scroll back through some of his Twitter posts, he says that he was upset about the midterms. He put EVA together because he was upset that the midterms didn't go well. And we got to early vote. We've just got to outvote the cheat, too big to rig, whatever you want to call it. Never said the election in 2020 was stolen, never even really asked any questions, which to me is kind of alarming because, and again, I realize in some ways I live in an echo chamber, but I think the sentiment in the country, and you as my audience, tell me if you agree, at March, April 2021, we all felt like we've been hit by a Mack truck. none of us were ready to move on, which is why the whole movement exists in the first place. Everybody wanted answers. The only people that wanted to sweep it under the rug were establishment Republicans or uniparty, call them whatever you want, whatever. But by and large, the MAGA movement was kind of like, wait a second, for crying out loud. What the heck just happened? So keep that in the back of your mind, that that's where he was. So fall of 2024, maybe right after the primaries, I don't know. He resurfaces with supposedly an enormous movement. Vote early, vote early. We got to chase ballots. We got to register voters. We got to vote early. And in the election integrity community, we all kind of went, because we had been on the ground for 4 years uncovering what the heck, how this even works in the first place. Most people have absolutely no clue how their ballot gets from when they write at the precinct, and then they go home and they watch the TV with the results. You have no idea what happens to your ballot. And I believe that is by design. And I spent 4 years, not just me, but other grassroots on the ground, not even part of my organization. It's not about Audit the Vote. Although at Audit the Vote PA, we've done a ton of good work. It was the grassroots in their backyards that just dug their heels in and said, we're going to frickin' figure this out. We're going to watch the polls. We're going to become poll workers. We're going to run for judge of election so we can actually run the precinct. I'm going to go watch them count mail-in ballots at the centralized tabulation to make sure they're not stuffing anything in there. And the amount of stuff that we uncovered in 4 years is overwhelming to the average person. So I don't want to go heavily into that. I say that to say this: when the early voting mail ballot push, that's why we all went. Did you have? And I'm going to take a pause, Brian, and just ask you: did you guys have? I don't know what the push was in Arizona. Were they pushing early voting mail ballots, and was that something that everybody on the ground, like us, was kind of like, oh no?
Well, let me answer that question. So, we had an election where Kari Lake was running for the governor of Arizona. And what happened was a lot of people were voting day of, and it just so happened that many of the machines malfunctioned in largely Republican areas only, disenfranchising and preventing a lot of people from voting day of, which was of course intentional. And there was a lot of research that went into that after the fact, and they found that basically they had reprogrammed those machines to change like the size of the ballot that was read, which caused some kind of like critical error, which was very strange. It pretty much had to be intentional, and apparently only in Republican areas. So when that happened, there was this huge outcry from largely the rhinos and the establishment Republicans, and of course the Scott Preslers of the world and Charlie Kirk, saying, see, you can't vote on election day. You have to play the Democrat game, and you have to chase ballots and vote early and mail in vote. Otherwise, the machines will break and you'll lose. So you have to do this. So that's kind of basically what happened. And then there was a huge push to do that. But I do want to throw this website out there so your viewers can view it maybe later. But
we'll have Joel share some of it. The more you and I talk, we'll have him share some, and you can explain this stuff through it. So yeah, throw it out there, and then we'll have Joel kind of run through some of it.
Sure. So it's realscottpresler.com. It's realscottpresler.com. There is a press release that's at the top, which is for any media. It kind of just summarizes everything that's on the site. I'm just going to mention like the top 3 points that are in there. It says realscottpresler.com exposes $118,000 in Rockefeller donations. So this is the Scott Presler's PAC early vote action from the Rockefellers, which are, widely known as not the good guys. And then Department of Defense social media and automation techniques to influence political outcomes. That's another one. And then Scott Presler's techniques linked to Republican losses in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So that's referencing Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, the Senate seat that was previously held for 35 consecutive years, and then the Supreme Court's seat. So both of those were just shocking losses. And there's lots of documented evidence on that website, realscottpresler.com. Along with Turning Point, they were all over the ground there. They were ballot chasing. They were, early voting. They were registering voters, everything. And there's a lot of data in there. But, and then it's talking about Scott Presler's father's role, Robert Presler, who of course worked as intelligence in the Pentagon. And, we're going to cover some of that. But if you could scroll back up, I think it's Joel, you scrolled down pretty quick on me. Go back up just a little bit. At the top of this site, there is a little promo video, but then it asks like, who is Scott Presler? And then there's a 3-hour X Spaces discussion, which Tony, you joined as well. And we just had a really well organized X Space discussion talking about the evidence on this site. If you find yourself in the car or, you're doing something and you want to listen to a great it's basically a podcast, but it's an X Space. It is, I think it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long, but it's just fantastic information, all factual based. We're not, doing any personal attacks, anything like that.
No, I don't care. The rainbow flag, I don't care. I don't care that he's gay. That's not my problem. This has nothing to do with him as a person. This has everything to do with the work that he's doing, potentially not even being legit, but then even assuming it is legit, the policies he's pushing for are disaster for election integrity. And that's where I take the main issue with all of this. Yeah. So Brian, keep going.
Well, and let's just talk about early voting for a second. So in Arizona, there's a group called We the People Arizona Alliance, and they actually sued to obtain the files on like the signature authentication, signature verification matching from Maricopa County, and they obtained those. And I can't remember, I believe it was the 2022 election, but I might be wrong in that, but it was one of the major elections. And what they found in that data was really interesting because in Arizona, they were doing early voting for, 26 days, whatever it was.
Oh, we have 50 in Pennsylvania. It's fine. The ballots aren't even ready to print usually when you can vote. That's
right. So the interesting thing was the first 26 days of that early voting, and there was like 1 million ballots that were taken in, in the mail, 1 million. And the interesting thing about the data is not a single one, 0 signatures were rejected during that time period. 0 of 1 million ballots for 26 days of early voting. And that's very strange. That's very, very strange. And then after the 26 days, all of a sudden they started doing signature verification and they started rejecting like the normal rate. Like, let's say it's, 3%, whatever. This is invalid signatures. There's no signatures. So explain to me how during early voting, you get 1 million ballots and you don't reject a single signature. And then after that's over, all of a sudden, well, now we're doing regular signature verification. So that right there is a huge red flag, not only for fraud, but for early voting. I mean, basically there was no safeguards on the early voting whatsoever. So I would never, ever recommend that anyone ever early vote just because on that one data point alone.
So Brian, what do you do though, if you're going to go on vacation and you're going to, like we had before 2019, our law in Pennsylvania changed. Act 77 brought us no excuse mail-in ballots. Before that, you had to apply for an absentee ballot. The chain of custody was way better on that, and you couldn't just get it. So what do you do in Arizona if you legit, like, I work the polls or I'm not going to be in town? What would you suggest if not early vote? Is there an option?
Well, I mean, I think we should go back to the old system because that had, as you said, had a lot better verification and safety checks on it. And we should go back to that old system. But I know people that were literally out of the country that they were trying to vote like an absentee ballot, and there was some kind of problem and it didn't work. So they literally flew back to the country in order to cast their vote in person. In Arizona, they allow in-person early voting for some time. So, I mean, if you absolutely have to, I suppose that's a little bit better than a mail-in ballot with the signature verification issues. But I mean, it's really tough. I really think we need to have one day voting. There can be some limited exceptions for mail-in voting, but for the wide part, no machines, hand counting with ID. We have to go back to that because, and we're talking about, the Pennsylvania and the Wisconsin elections. So Scott Presler and Turning Point, they were all over those elections on the ground, registering voters, all these inflated claims, which were disproven, by the way. Just for example, Scott Presler claimed in, I believe it was in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, we registered 50,000 Amish voters. Well, that's almost impossible because, 50% of the Amish population is under the age of 18. Most of them don't involve themselves in politics. Some of them were probably already registered. And his number 2 employee at Early Vote Action, PAC, just 9 days earlier said, well, in summation, we registered 10,000 voters. So it's physically impossible to.
Let me interject with a story, because I've interviewed. Let me interject with a story about that, because I've interviewed a couple of people on the ground myself, because I didn't know, the Amish, it looks like, yes, we got Amish people to vote. Not saying they didn't, but a nuance that I think is important for people to understand is Amish are typically, unless they're Mennonites, depending on what sect they're in, their bishops prohibit them they have to get permission basically from their religious leader in order to vote. And so a guy that's 6'2" with long hair and a rainbow flag is not going to knock on the door and convince an Amish person that they need to register to vote. It takes somebody in the community basically. And I spoke to an individual in one of the counties that worked with, not necessarily directly with Presler, but were given volunteers from Early Vote Action, which they were very thankful for. But she was the one with the relationships on the ground with the individual Amish themselves. And she was the one that did all the work to actually get them registered to vote. I don't know how many. It definitely wasn't 10,000. And so I just want to share another, again, I'm for interviewing. I like, Brian, that you throw the numbers, the Rockefeller, the defense, and all of that. But in my election integrity journey, I learned that if we're going to really go to guns, I hate to even say it that way. I want 2 credible eyewitnesses saying this is what happened before I run with any real narrative, that I'm willing to put my name on a narrative. And so I am actively asking people questions. I want the truth. I don't want you to tell me something you think I want to hear because you think now we're bashing Mr. Presler. No, I want to know the truth. Tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's the consensus. So his Amish numbers, if he says he registered 50,000 Amish, that is completely false. Probably a lie. I'm concluding it's a lie. He knew he was lying. It's definitely false. So problem. I don't know how many red flags we've stuck in the ground. I'm trying to keep track in my head. I think we're at least at 4 right now.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that Amish claim. So Joel, if you could share the screen again, there's a specific screenshot from Mr. Presler. It's about halfway down the page. I'll have you scroll. Yeah, actually scroll down and I'll tell you when to stop. Keep going. Yeah, keep going down. Keep going down. Slow down. Yeah, keep going down a little bit.
Oh, good. These are on here, Brian. That's perfect because some of this stuff is
right there. Wait, go up just a little bit more. Okay, so this is important because we just talked about it's highly unlikely that 50,000 were registered. Well, the interesting thing is a woman named Dr. Jan Halper, who, by the way, she says that she's a consultant on her profile, her X profile. It says she's a consultant for the Department of Defense, I believe it is. She claims, she says, if Trump wins Pennsylvania, we owe it to this man, Scott Presler, registered 180,000 Amish people. So this is, talking about the larger state of Pennsylvania, not just Lancaster County, but that was viewed 9 million times. So 9 million times that message went out, and you can see the little red square because Mr. Presler commented on it. He's not refuting that. He's saying, thank you, Dr. Jan. We did it. Yep. My heart is exploding with happiness. My cup is full. So this is clearly a false statement. He's not refuting it. In fact, he seems to be saying it's true. But later on, Mr. Presler was criticized and forced to say, well, actually, that's probably not accurate. The data shows there's only about 90,000 Amish eligible to vote in the entire state of Pennsylvania. So that might be inflated. He was later forced to admit that, but he let this lie go out there to the point that it got 9 million views. Mr. Presler did this. It's amazing. So a lot of people believe that, and it was totally fake. And if you scroll up a little bit more, let's go up. There's a chart, and it shows the total number of voters registered. Keep going up.
Yeah. So Audit the Vote did that, Brian. That's my data guide.
That's why I want to show it. Okay, right there. So it's a little bit small on that screen, but what it's maybe you should describe it, Tony. You're the expert. Why don't you describe it to me? Somebody
else take my work. It means that we're doing a decent job if someone else can communicate it. essentially what you're looking at from 2023 to 2024, there were only 246,507 Republicans registered that year that were not there the previous year. And so to say that there were 280,000, whatever that number was, 180,000, it's just not physically possible. The data is right there. You can actually see the trend from 2015 to 2016, and then 19 to 20 and 23 to 24. We're actually registering less Republicans every year. And yet the other concerning, again, red flag, which we're probably going to stack up a football field of red flags before this is all said and done. Another red flag is the fact that Presler et al. Are running around saying the answer is voter registration. We've just got to out-register. We've got to outrun this. We're going to run out of people. This is the law of diminishing returns. We are not going to be able to out-register a baked-in cheat, which there is a ridiculous amount of evidence to show. So back to you, Brian. I hope that conveyed what you were looking to.
Yeah, I think it did. I'll just add, if Mr. Presler and Turning Point were truly on the ground, making such a big difference, registering all these voters, why did the net new registrations go down? They did less than people did for free, previous years. But Mr. Presler's PAC has been paid, nearly $7 million in donations, including from the Rockefellers. So what exactly did that money accomplish? I mean, if the net new registrations are going down, when before you had volunteers doing that for free and they registered more people, and then in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, you had Republican losses. Are those strategies effective? I mean, are they working? They seem to be not working. If you don't have Trump in the race, if you don't have, egg prices and gas prices on the ballot, it looks like ballot chasing and early voting don't work. But let's talk a little bit more. Let's scroll down a little bit more. There's another chart I want to see. Keep going down a little bit more. Down a little bit more.
The Lancaster one is my favorite. That's what really opened my eyes. So as he's
scrolling, stop right there. Yeah. Okay. Is this what you're talking about, Tony?
No, I was just going to say, let me add some context for this so you understand the journey that I was on, because it wasn't till I really connected with Brian and some others recently that I'm like, okay, I can't just shut up about this anymore for the sake of unity. Like, this is not, I'm big on unity. Like, we don't throw our own under the bus, but he's not really our own, I don't think. And I came to that conclusion partially because after the 2024 election, Trump won. I was in shock. A lot of us were waiting for the other shoe to drop. I didn't care that he was running around the state taking credit for it. I was just so darn thankful that we've been given this reprieve. It wasn't until the data started to come out after February 1st is when all the counties in Pennsylvania, that's their deadline. They have to have official results submitted to the State Department February 1st of 2025. And it wasn't until I started looking at the data after that I was kind of like, this looks like a con job. Like, he's taking credit for the state. And I'll let Brian go with his data from here. But I just want to say that only 20,000 newly registered Republicans that registered in 2024 actually voted in Pennsylvania's 2020 election. Trump won the state by 100,000 votes. So you can't come in here and say that my registration effort, I'm the hero, my registration effort, we registered all these new voters, that's what won the state. The data doesn't show that. And that's not to take away from you if you were on the ground. I talked to people today that were on the ground that told me they have the receipts. I registered hundreds of people. Awesome. Congratulations. That is important work, but that's not what gave President Trump the victory in Pennsylvania. And that's the concern. So Brian, over to you.
Yes, and so this is specifically, again, Lancaster County data. The first chart here is, it's votes. So I'm glad you make that distinction between registration and votes, because of course, if you register someone, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to vote. But these are votes cast, and this is in Lancaster County, November 3rd, 2020. Of course, Mr. Biden allegedly defeated Trump, but we saw in Lancaster County that Trump won. And in 2020, he actually won by quite a bit. He defeated Biden by 44,362 votes. So that's in 2020, okay? And if you scroll down a little bit more, now it's Lancaster County in 2024. And what you see there is that Trump defeated Harris by 46,000. So really, I mean, it's only 2,000 more votes for Trump. It was totally red. Trump won there in 2020. Why did we spend any time in Lancaster County? I mean, it was deep red. He blew Biden out of the water. It doesn't make any sense to spend any time there. But we get all this, oh, I'm in Lancaster County, I'm registering the Amish. None of that mattered. It was all worthless because Trump destroyed Biden in 2020. It was a total waste of money to even be there. That money should have been spent somewhere else where Trump, supposedly lost to Biden in 2020. What a con job that was.
And Brian, let me add to that for Lancaster. So Audit the Vote's canvassing effort, what we're most probably known for, and I'm personally most proud of, is that the boots on the ground, we did this. We canvassed 12 counties after 2020, knocked doors, and asked the resident of the house, make sure it's who you lived here in 2020 election. Did you vote? How many are registered to vote here? And how many that you know of that are registered actually voted in the 2020 election? We did that in 12 counties. Lancaster, oddly, was the cleanest one with a 37% discrepancy rate. That means 37% of the time when that question was asked, one of the three answers didn't match what the state had as the certified result. And that was in Lancaster. So do we trust the 2020 numbers to begin with, or even the 2024 for that matter? That's the problem. There's no transparency. So we don't even know if these numbers are legit, let alone somebody raising millions of dollars running around the state taking credit for work that they don't even know. You can't even see what's happening. So back to you, Brian. I feel like we're on a news show.
Thank you. And so Joel, scroll down just a little bit more so you can see his, okay, right there. So Mr. Presler was questioned by a very large social media account on X, MJ Truth Ultra, I believe it was. And he had a number of questions. He just said, why are you not looking at all these issues? I mean, we have documented, registration fraud. We have proof of fraud. Elon Musk and Doge, revealed that there was 2 million illegals that have social security numbers, and they confirmed some of them are registered. Some of them did vote in the elections. What about all these things? And Mr. Presler's response was on X very publicly, I stand by my comments. You are wrongfully telling people the election was rigged when it wasn't. You have no evidence that there was any wrongdoing in this election. That's not true. There is evidence that there was wrongdoing. So he's just out there doing the left's work for them. I mean, out there going against Trump and what Trump has said, saying, there's no election or there's no election fraud. There's no evidence of this. That is a huge, huge red flag. And when when MJ Truth Ultra continued to question him and he posted some of those screenshots, it was a very cordial conversation. Scott Presler blocked him on X, which he does to everyone. I'm blocked. You're blocked. Anyone who questions him. In fact, when we did that X space, we had at one point 589 concurrent listeners. They actively went through and aggressively blocked everyone who was on there. And I believe using an automated script actually blocked anyone who was following anyone who liked or reposted that or any other kind of questioning. We'll get in a little bit more to that, but at this point, I mean, everyone is blocked by Scott Presler. He blocks like half the internet. It's ridiculous.
So I'm not sure how he still has 2 million followers on X because everybody's getting blocked. So again, now put a stake in the ground with the biggest red flag you can possibly. Here's what really did it for me is that I tried for months when the data came out, 2025. I was kind of quiet. I started posting on his platform because he has 2 million followers just to try to get some help and attention on the election integrity issues. He was posting about voter rolls and using AI to find like ineligible voters, which we've been on the ground. That is a loaded topic if ever there was one. We have tried every trick in the book. There are federal laws on the books that are roadblocks to that. The fix to this is at the local level. You've got to be on the ground in your own county, which is something we learned the first year pounding the pavement. And I was just trying to help. If you're going to do this, here, look at this, look at that. And so I was posting every day a bunch of stuff to try to get his attention. I was never rude. I was never disrespectful. And yet after the Wisconsin loss, we're blocked. And so that was like my holy crap. Like, this is literally what the left does. This is censorship. Like, he doesn't want, when you don't want your work questioned, that is stake in the ground, flare, smoke signal, whatever you want to call it, you guys. That's not good. Not good that he's not willing to have a conversation with MJ Truth. And it's not just us. It's like a lot of people that just tried to have a civil discussion with him. He is silencing, and that is frightening.
Right. And it's actually worse than that. There's people like on the X space that was recorded again on realscottpresler.com. There's people that knew him personally that were working with him, putting on rallies, driving him around. And they told him there is issues with the elections, and literally got the response, "I don't care," from Scott Presler. So it's not like he's not uninformed. He knows. He's willfully denying it. He says, "I don't care. We're going to keep doing this." And why would he do that? We're going to talk about that. But if you can scroll down a little bit more, Joel, scroll down on this a little bit more, please.
And so people in the comments, they're like, "Oh, I know,
Right
Debbie,
there, right there.
Share this. That's why we're doing this. Share this."
Yes, it's all on realscottpresler.com. So this is a post from Liz Harrington. And what Liz Harrington says is, something stinks in Pennsylvania. The 36th district has not seen a Democrat state senator since it moved from Philadelphia to Lancaster County in 1979. Lancaster County went plus 16 for Trump just 4 months ago. And yet we're supposed to believe Republicans put the Democrat candidate over the top with mail-in votes. We're going to look at that data. And there was more mail-in votes for the Democrat candidate than the Democrat voters who requested them. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's scroll down a little bit more, because I think that chart is a little lower. It's a little bigger. Yeah, keep going down. There's the post from MJ Truth Ultra. We'll just go past that. All right, right there.
There it is.
Why don't you talk about this, Tony? Since again, this is your chart, so you talk about it.
That's my data. I'm so proud of him. I'm literally his face. Vico gets all the credit for this. My data guy. I'm just the loudmouth. So what this is actual proof, and this isn't the only race we saw this in, by the way. It's not an accident that President Trump is almost the only Republican who won a statewide race since 2020. Every other Republican race did not. And what you see here is that the light blue line is the number of ballots that were sent out, and it's by party. The way Pennsylvania does it, if you're a Democrat, Republican, we have closed primaries. And when you request a ballot and the county sends it out, we are able to track whether that was a Democrat sent to a Democrat voter or sent to a Republican voter. That's the light blue line. 8,500 for the Dem, 5,400 for the Republican. The middle blue line is how many ballots were then returned. Some get lost in the mail, some get bounced back. Lord only knows if there's harvesting going on in post offices where nobody knows what happens to the ones that don't get delivered. Whole separate rabbit trail we don't have time to go down. But returned, you see 7,100 for the Dem, 4,300 for the Republican. But when you look at votes per candidate, because I never thought I'd see the silver lining in the fact that we have centralized tabulation and that the mail ballots are counted separately from in-person votes, which we were trying to fix, put the mail ballots back to the precincts, thinking that that would maybe lessen ballot harvesting, and we could still make an argument it could, but silver lining is we are able to tell exactly how many votes came from the mail ballots because of the way they're counted. And so in this case, that dark blue line for the Democrat candidate shows that he got more votes from mail ballots than Democrats who returned to them, which means where are they coming from? Oh, look at the Republican. Hark, the Republican got less votes than returned mail ballots for the Republican candidate. So what's happening is Republicans who are returning mail ballots are not voting Republican. And how could this be happening? Well, oddly enough, there's about an 800 vote discrepancy here. About 800-ish Republicans who returned ballots did not vote for the Republican candidate. And there's about 800 mail ballots requested from low propensity voters.
Low propensity voters, you say?
What could be happening there? There isn't a massive propaganda campaign being run to attack them with propaganda constantly to flip their vote. And this isn't saying fraud. This isn't even ballot harvesting. This isn't cheating. This is no machine rigging. This is the most benign sense. Tons of money from leftist organizations, maybe some right that are trying to pretend like they're right, but they're secretly on the left, are funding these propaganda campaigns to low propensity voters because they know they can flip their vote. And we spoke to people in nursing homes, what the Dr. Oz and Fetterman race, and I was no fan of Oz, but I did hold my nose and vote for him, who said, Republicans can't bring ourselves to vote for Dr. Oz because he's hurting puppies. And everyone in Pennsylvania, Arizona probably doesn't know that. Carol, she's still watching from Minnesota. Pennsylvania remembers very well the hit piece that came out from the Fetterman campaign, who he later had to retract because it was a lie saying that Oz was killing puppies. But Republican voters, it was too late. They were already influenced because they were low propensity. They are not following politics. They don't know what's going on. They're easier to flip. Again, no cheating, no rigged machines, no nothing. The most benign sense. We are literally handing over when you vote early and get a mail ballot, you're literally handing over your data and giving them exactly what they need to target the people. Now they can hyper focus their money in the low propensity people that requested ballots, and boom, we'll never win another election again. So there.
Right. And I just want to add a couple of comments to that. So targeting low propensity Republican voters, just for your viewers, in case you don't know what that means these are Republicans that they tend not to vote, Republicans that don't vote. So I don't know, there could be liberal Republicans, maybe they're just busy, they're not paying attention, who knows. But if you look at the strategy that Turning Point specifically and Scott Presler, who worked in partnership with Turning Point, they targeted registering low propensity voters. That was their strategy. They specifically did that, and it's all over the place. In fact, Charlie Kirk, the CEO of Turning Point, posted after the Wisconsin loss, "We are now the party of low propensity voters." And he went on and on about, all this stuff, but basically we need to target and register low propensity voters. But the data seems to show that that's directly what caused the loss. Scott Presler says there was no fraud. There was no fraud. So if there was no fraud, what caused those Republican ballots, I think it was 17% or so of the ones that were returned, to go to the Democrat? Well, they were most likely the low propensity voters. For whatever reason, their ballots went Democrat. Well, it looks like if there's no fraud, according to Scott Presler and Turning Point directly caused those losses by targeting those low propensity voters, registering them, having them request mail-in ballots, which then went a large proportion for the Democrat. And you said it was something like 800. The margin of victory here was only 250, wasn't it?
It was like 400. No, the margin of victory was 400.
400,
but
450.
It's odd that the low propensity, so about 800 low propensity Republicans requested a mail ballot. And that's about how many more when you look at the Democrat, the votes versus ballots returned. That's about how many votes the Democrat got, was 800 from the Republican. So again, it's not dead on proof, but it's a lot of data that you can't just look at the surface. You can't just look at, we knocked this many doors and Trump won. Okay. But who actually showed up of the doors that you knocked and the ballots you supposedly chased? How many of them actually turned out to vote? When I see that only 20,000 newly registered Republicans even turned out in 2024, I'm not convinced that chasing mail ballots, not to mention low propensity after all of this, I'm not convinced that that's a winning strategy. The other question that I get that I want to address, Brian, maybe you can speak to this, was, so people go, well, so then Tony, what's the solution? Because we're stuck with this stupid mail-in ballot law and we're not going to get out of this situation overnight. Don't we have to play their game? No, I can confidently tell you this now in 4 years, and Brian would probably agree. Messaging is horrific on the conservative side. There's either no messaging or bad messaging. We got our rear ends handed to us in the messaging area for decades. That's why women now think, a lot of good conservative Christian women think that abortion is healthcare. That's because it was pounded into their head via messaging for decades. So until the Republicans realize that it's a messaging issue and they need to get on board with the narrative and the messaging, we are not going to outrun or out ballot chase this baked in cheat. Messaging, shameless plug. That's why you need to get in my Constitution class on May 1st if you've never taken one before, because we take this back by winning over hearts and minds. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Right. And you talk about messaging, but when it's a false message, like abortion, for example, it's propaganda. And it's, basically proven that at least 30% of the population is subject to propaganda. And if they hear something 6 times, that's why, advertising companies say you need 6 touches. That's what the Nazi propaganda, strategy was. If you hear something 6 times, at least 30% of the population will believe it, no matter what it is, no matter how much of a lie it is, they will believe it, and they will never not believe it. They'll believe it forever. Even if they're given data that disproves it, they was like, no, I won't believe that data. I believe this. That's what I'll believe. And it's insane. And now,
which is why critical thinking is vital.
Right,
and training up our children to be able to think critically and question literally everything.
Absolutely. And consider for a second, what if someone ran propaganda saying, well, this thing I'm going to do over here, that's going to solve your problem and that's going to fix elections. I'm just going to smash that message over and over so that everyone hears it 6 times. 30% of the population is going to believe that no matter what it is, even if it doesn't work, like ballot chasing and low propensity voter registration and mail-in voting and all, and use the system that we have and just vote harder and it'll work this time. They will be propagandized and they will believe that. But why would someone do that? And Joel, if you could share the screen again, just right where you were. Why would someone want, millions of people in America to be propagandized if something doesn't work? And Joel, if you want to share so this is Scott Presler's PAC Early Vote Action has received over $6.8 million in 2023 and 2024. It's linked to the FEC filings. You can go view this information yourself. It's probably even more now. If you scroll down a little bit, there's the total. And let's keep scrolling down. Let's go down a little bit more. So some of the top donators, this is Lysine Rockefeller. If you look at the occupation, works for Winrock International. Okay, that's a Rockefeller organization. Donated $100,000 in 2024. And if you scroll down a little bit more, okay, stop right there. So this is another Rockefeller, William Rockefeller, donated $18,000. So, I mean, the Rockefellers, you can look up the Rockefellers yourself. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but for
they've
donations,
probably already been down it.
for donations of that size, typically a donor of that size would want an in-person meeting. Maybe they would hand off the check in person. So I guess the question is, how did Scott Presler get in a meeting with the Rockefellers and get all this money, donated to him? And then what did he have to show for that? But let's scroll down a little bit more past the Rockefellers. Okay,
let me add this into don't lose your train of thought. Brian, if I don't say it when I'm thinking it, it'll just my thoughts come too fast. Mm-hmm. Liberty Line, great to see you. Hope the baby's doing okay. Scrolling back up, this is why I think we deeper dives into the finances are good, but we need to do a little bit deeper dives, which Brian is about to do, because the Fight Like a Flynn, you'll see the Fight Like a Flynn PAC on that. Mm-hmm. That had given money, and General Flynn, people either love him or hate him or everything in the middle. Full transparency. General Flynn donated to Audit the Vote as well. I didn't, so it's very possible we were rookies when we partnered with them. And I'm not even saying, I don't know, like he seems okay to me. Like I've met him in person. I've been around him, his family, they seem like good people. I don't have proof to suggest otherwise. So just discernment when you're looking at these things, because somebody could pull up Audit the Vote's finances and go, oh my gosh, the America Project gave them XYZ. Well, yeah, because it was the summer of 2022 and we didn't know what the heck we were doing. And we could have found out something bad afterwards that would have been like, oh, we probably shouldn't have taken that money. So just keep that in mind as you look through finances. Discernment is vital. Keep going, Brian.
Right. All right. Thank you. So I'm going to mention an article. Again, this is linked. It's from California Club India. They do a lot of articles on like net worth. So they wrote an article by Kartik Pratap, and it estimated that Scott Presler's annual income is $700,000 a year. I've actually heard higher estimates, but $700,000 a year. In the article, he states he inherited a free $550,000 home. So that I believe that's in Florida, and has a net worth of $4 million. Mr. Presler also is known to own a $320,000 apartment in downtown Pittsburgh. He announced recently on social media that he bought another home in Pennsylvania and is moving there, living there. So that's 3 homes now. And let's not forget the free $100,000 diesel Suburban that he received in 2024. You can see a photo of the car, the receipt. I actually have the check image somewhere too. And this was a Give, Send, Go, or another crowdfunding. They said, "Oh, Scott Presler is such a hard worker. Let's give him a free $100,000 car." So why would someone want to use a method and propagandize people, even if it doesn't work? Well, now you know why, because there's a financial interest. This is not a homeless dog walker that picks up trash. His family actually came from money, and that's right below it. His father, Robert Presler, is a director of informations in the DSD and the Pentagon. You can see a photo of Scott and I believe it's his mother and his father there. He's wishing his father happy Father's Day. On the right is his LinkedIn page. It says, you know, he worked in the Department of Defense, Director of Information Operations in the Pentagon, Director of Global Force Planning in the Pentagon, and then counterterrorism training and equipment as well. So it's interesting that he has a intelligence background, but also that, you know, there's this money, there's this finance. And Scott Presler certainly portrayed that, you know, oh, I'm just, you know, I don't have a car. I'm just living on people's couches. I'm couch surfing. Well, that's not really true either. This data that we just covered exposes that. But if we scroll down a little bit more, it gets a little bit interesting with his father. So pause right there. So there's about 9 screenshots, and they're all centered around the same phrase, which was in response to, there was some criticism of Presler on X. It was, you know, Scott Presler should be kicked out of the MAGA movement, right? That was the criticism. And then immediately after that, right around February 7th to February 9th, yeah, you can scroll down a little bit. There's pages and pages and pages, and it all says the same thing. It says, Scott Presler is a national treasure. Scott Presler is a national treasure. Scott Presler is a national treasure. Just over and over and over. There's a little bit of variation. There's some photos in there. But, you know, why is that important? Why does that matter? Well, we saw this on the left, this like bot army or paid influencers. And for Kamala or, you know, Joe Biden, they do this. They post the exact same message over and over and over. And what did we talk about? Propaganda, the same message, you know, over and over and over 6 times. So this is basically evidence of that. And we don't know how it was coordinated. You know, we don't know how much of it was bots or whatever. But yeah, go ahead and pause right there. So it's saying that it's all between February 7th, 8th, and 9th. If you look at some of these account profiles, many of them exclusively like requote or repost. Many of them, you know, I don't know, there might be questionable accounts. But so this is keep scrolling down. This is a quote from Emerald Robinson. And she noticed this too. She said, "Behold, the entire fan base of Scott Presler is in the comment section of my tweets day and night. Look at all these DOD spooks screaming vote early. Really makes you think." And there's a, you know, of course, a military woman there. You know, clearly she works in the U.S. Navy. Emma Robertson's calling it out as a, you know, DOD spook. But so let's scroll down a little bit more. So, you know, Mr. Presler has worked very closely with Turning Point. So scroll down a little bit more, Yeah. Okay. So right here. So it's interesting because this exact technique was used in Arizona. Don't forget, I'm in Arizona. I'm also a state committeeman on the AZ GOP. This was used by Turning Point Action employees who are paid in an attempt to influence the AZ GOP chairman's election just this last year. So Tyler Boyer, who's the chief operating officer of Turning Point, he started a smear campaign. I have screenshots of that. He posted these comments against the current GOP chairwoman, Gina Swoboda. And then what you saw is his paid employees then spread that message all over X about the same time, almost the exact same wording. How do I know they were Turning Point employees? There's a little red circle there because they all have that little Turning Point icon in their profile. And if you scroll down a little bit, you can see just pages and pages of these screenshots. It circles like what they said. There's the Turning Point icon. It's the same message. They're slamming the AZ GOP chairwoman. Keep going down. This was during the election. So they're attempting to influence the outcome, the political outcome. All right, now this is what we've been building to.
Which isn't illegal, but if you're knowingly doing something that isn't going to work because you're making tons of money, that's not.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you think about it, so here's the interesting thing about Tyler Boyer and Turning Point was they previously endorsed Gina Swoboda a year earlier when Jeff DeWitt resigned. So they all endorsed her. What changed? It's only a year. How could you hate her so much? Well, she canceled an $80,000 contract to Jake Hoffman, who's basically a Turning Point employee. His company, Rally Forge, has been paid about $2 to $3 million by Turning Point.
Brian, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go because I don't do censorship. I wasn't even going to go down the Turning Point route just because for the record and my followers, the jury's out for me on Turning Point. I don't know. I have good relationships with a lot of people that work for them. I will tell you this is alarming. So my antenna's up. So Carol, to answer your question, I don't know. Jury's out. I'm going to let Brian keep talking and then you decide.
All right, well, we'll buckle up. But anyways, She also cut off their access to the data, which that is the key thing for Turning Point. And another interesting connection to Scott Presler and Turning Point, their app was made by the same company called Superfeed Technologies Incorporated. Superfeed Technologies Incorporated was created by Turning Point. Tyler Boyer, again, the COO of Turning Point, is the current CEO of Superfeed, and he's the chairman of the board of Superfeed.
What other, Brian, apps did they make? Did they make any other apps that are noteworthy? Or
they did. If you go to either the Play Store or iTunes, the Apple Store, you go to Superfeed Technologies Incorporated, or you go to either the Turning Point app or the Early Vote Action app, you'll see created by Superfeed Technologies, and it says other apps they make, and there are several. I believe there's even one for the Democrats. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on that one, but
this is why the money trail is confusing to follow, because big corporations, I found this out first couple years on Audit the Vote, they donate to both sides. They don't give a crap who wins. They just want to be able to say, well, we gave you money, so you need to do XYZ. Lobbyists, that's how that works. Mm-hmm. And so it's I don't want to say it's not a red flag. It's a tiny red flag for me, but it's not huge because they all do that. Zuckerberg gave Trump $1 million when he got either for his inauguration fund or whatever.
Because he stay out of jail? Is that what that was for?
Right? Like, that's how this sick game is played. Yes, it's sick and gross, but that's how it's played.
All right. Yeah. And the point of this is just to show, like, why did Turning Point decide that they had to turn on Gina Swoboda? Because they cut off the data, they cut off money. There were some other reasons. So in a year, they flipped on her. They ran this coordinated, micro influencer smear campaign. But now here's where it gets interesting. So Scott Presler's father, Robert Presler, is mentioned in an intelligence DoD report on influencing political outcomes using social media and automation. And the report is called Improving C2 and Situational Awareness for Operations in and Through the Information Environment. And in the acknowledgement of that document, and it's linked there on the website, realscottpresler.com, that document's linked there. It's about 100 pages, interesting read. But in the acknowledgement, it says, we wish to thank our various points of contact and interlocutors in the sponsoring office, Rob Presler. So Rob Presler sponsored this paper on influencing political outcomes using social media and automation. And what's in that report? Let's go in there. One of the things what's that?
I said, I don't want to, but no, keep going. I mean, this is hard because, yeah. I get it. If you're struggling, I'm struggling with all of you.
I know. There's some quotes, but scroll down past this a little bit. One of the things that's in there is, stop right there. Mimetic warfare. Mimetic warfare. What is that? It's a form of modern information warfare and psychological warfare that involves propagation of memes on social media to influence public opinion. So this is getting back to like this propaganda. Influencing people what they think. Okay, so let's pin that for a second. On page 32 of the report, it says it mentions mimetic warfare, and then on page 14. So sorry, we jumped from 32 back to 14. Page 14, there's a quote, and listen to this. When a post by a user has been met with an inundation of, it says opprobrium or flaming. By other users, the initial user may be hesitant or suppressed to post again, expressing similar views. So think about this. When someone posted, Scott Presler should be kicked out of the MAGA, and then huge influx of Scott Presler is he's a national treasure. But there was a lot of negative comments too. It's like, oh, you're an idiot, you're stupid. Scott Presler worked so hard, shut up. So this paper is describing that is a Department of Defense military technique for influencing political outcomes to basically like suppress your opposition. And the average person will say, oh, maybe I was wrong. I shouldn't post that anymore. I shouldn't criticize, that thing that I was criticizing. Then it says on page 88, additionally, social media platforms were infiltrated by foreign bots and automated retweets. An analysis that fails to account for these facts would have negative value. It would mislead instead of inform. And then this is the last one I'll read on page 97 to 98. It says, the utility of using automation can be seen in Russian factories of people overseeing propaganda and trolling bots, running many accounts that are near identical or use slight variation on the same message, perhaps via automated rephrasing. The sheer volume of content posted on social media sites is possible only via automation, with reactions and responses to the post controlled manually. Manual responses. These are near MADCOM processes, and they suggest how hard it would be to distinguish sophisticated, fully automated propaganda from human-generated propaganda. So that's the quote. So I've shown here on the site documented evidence of this repetitive kind of flaming, automated rephrasing. I mean, it appears that way. That appears to be the technique that Scott Presler and Turning Point are using. It's literally referenced in a DoD report commissioned by Scott Presler's father, Robert Presler, as a way to influence political outcomes using social media and automation. I mean, and then you couple in that so many people are blocked, and really like an auto block. So there's all these posts of, I don't know why Scott Presler blocked me. I don't even follow him. Like, I've never even followed him and I'm blocked. And it's because they ran a script and auto blocked anyone who shared or reposted like the 3-hour X Spaces discussion on Scott Presler.
That does make sense, because we were blocked right after the Wisconsin loss. I mean, and it looks like that's when a lot of people just got, I don't think they're targeting individuals. And again, this was like, if you feel like you drank from a fire hose, I'm with you, because Brian has clearly done his research. I love that he's on the ground in Arizona. I trust eyes on the ground before I trust any media outlet whatsoever. And best I can tell, we're not looking at a hologram. He's a real person. He's on the ground in Arizona. He has been for a while. I vetted him through other sources to make sure he's real. And so I think we have a football field now of red flags. And Brian, I don't mean to cut you off. I just think, and you guys tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I just feel like my audience is probably like, whoa. So we need to have you back so we can do like more of a deep dive and answer questions. I encourage people, here's the biggest thing that changed for me since 2020. I just started asking some freaking questions. I lived my entire adult life with my head in the sand, not paying attention to anything going on around me. I asked very little questions. And now I just ask questions. And if you do it in the right way, it doesn't drive you crazy. You don't let it drive you crazy. You don't let it make you become completely paranoid for everything. For me, I'm grounded in the Bible. I'm grounded in the truth. And when I'm completely overwhelmed with stuff like this, I run to Jesus. I realize that's not everybody's story, but that's mine. And so we just keep going one day at a time. What do we do with all of this information now? I see people in the chat that are asking about, can we do shorter videos and share? So yes, this will end up getting chopped up into clips, and we will be posting these on all the Audit the Vote social medias. Brian shares all of our stuff, if not a ton of it, multiple times. And so we will make these clips public, and the smaller clips might be easier for people to digest. So I would encourage you, just follow and share one that resonates with you. And you're like, I was just talking to somebody the other day that was singing his praises. Share one of the clips, just short little snippet. Changing hearts and minds takes some time. And I can tell Brian and I can't probably drop names at this point, but you're going to see some interesting things come out. And I hate when people do that. I'm doing exactly what I hate. People tease. But just things are going to get a little wild. I'll tell you this story. I know in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the word is traveling on the street that the legislators don't want anything to do with Scott Presler or early vote action. My state rep had a gun bash just last week or the week before. This is in person. He told people, early vote action employees, which are probably very good people, which it stinks because I hate seeing collateral damage and good people getting thrown in the crosshairs, were asked to leave. And the state rep said, I do not want associated with Scott Presler or early vote action. And I heard today from another state rep that is the word traveling around Harrisburg. Now, one argument could be, well, these are swamp critters anyway, right? I get it. But again, it's starting to permeate. So just keep your eyes open, pay attention, share something when it resonates with you, and take a breath. Brian, what are your closing thoughts or anything else that you think is pertinent we should discuss before we shut it down? And if you guys have questions, stick them in the chat while we have him. Hopefully this won't be the last time he joins me, but stick a question in the chat. And Brian, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And I'd be glad to be back. And, please do hit me with questions because I can answer a lot of questions. But, there's a lot of things we didn't cover that are on RealScottPresler.com. Also, my website, brianference.com. And you can follow me on X at brianference1. And of course, my podcast, which is magamindpodcast.com. Again, on Real Scott Presler, there was a nearly 3 hour X-Space discussion with multiple panelists. Tony was a member of that. And we just discussed this data. I would say, look at the data, look at the facts. I'm sorry, you can't just take people at their word anymore. You have to say, is this true? Am I being told the truth? Just look at COVID, look at the election. You have to ask questions. You have to say, show me the data. Let me see if this is true or not. And unfortunately, again, realscottpresler.com, it basically disproves claim after claim after claim after claim after claim after claim. I don't know what he said that is true, that is proven true. I mean, there's a lot of false claims that have been, disproven. I haven't really seen a lot of claims that have been proven true. So it's very data driven. At the bottom of the site, there is, some of the various scandals that he's been involved in, which is a whole nother topic.
Oh yeah, we didn't even go there.
But we didn't go there. But and I like to stick to the data.
Presler, Virginia GOP. Just Google that. Scott Presler, Virginia GOP.
Exactly, and that's at the bottom too. But don't fall into the trap. What Mr. Presler wants to do is he wants to say, "Oh, I'm a victim. They're against me because I'm gay. I'm such a victim." That's just a trap. It's a verbal game. He hasn't answered anyone on any of these allegations. He just blocked everyone.
Yep. Because he could dispel this. If he was truly MAGA on our side, he could come out, have a candid one-on-one civil discussion, address every one of these issues. He could do that, and it would put this to bed. But the fact that he runs from it was one of the multiple nails in the coffin for me, which is why I decided to do this.
I see there's a question on the screen. It says, I assume Trump knows all of this, Laura, Eric, etc. If you look at Laura Trump, she took a lot of photos with Scott Presler. I don't know if it was like a hair and makeup party. So, I was informed how Mr. Presler was introduced to Laura Trump. The individual that did it, maybe wishes that they hadn't. But, that association, I think they got caught up with it just as much. Trump has a lot of bad advisors, particularly in Arizona, and they give him a lot of bad advice. And he just, I don't know, takes it. He's a busy guy. But
he's still surrounded by vipers.
A lot of Trump's advisors are undermining him. They're trying to stop him. They want to take money from what actually works. They want to distract from what actually works. And so, they put, no, I'm not on TikTok. I applied for TikTok with a Magamind podcast account, and I was immediately denied and banned on TikTok. So I didn't even post anything. I just had the name Magamind.
We're getting warnings. I created a TikTok early on, then I didn't do anything with it because it's owned by the Chinese. You don't want to do that. But we went back to it for reach because we just want to reach people. So we went back to it, but we're already getting warned on stuff we post. This goes against community standards. That goes. I'm like,
I can't even get approved for an account. So that's how I guess interesting my data is. But no, and I wish that several people would inform Eric and Laura Trump of the truth. Have them sit them down and say, look. Let's look at some of the data. Okay, I know these claims are being made. Oh, he's fantastic. But let's look at the data. And the data shows these claims are not true. We have these losses in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. If Trump's not in the race, it doesn't look good. And I think, unfortunately, you'll continue to see Republican losses. If elections aren't fixed, we have to fix our elections. We have a limited amount of time. Someone asked, what do you do? What do you do about this? Well, I have been given information that DOJ is potentially doing some investigations in Arizona on some of our election fraud. I believe that if we can expose with their publicity that they have, just really expose, hey, there's a lot of fraud. Let's say we have 100% verified, this many illegals had social security numbers. Here's the data. They voted in the election. Here it is. These 3 elections were invalid, that, they need to be thrown out. And if DOJ, screams that from the rooftop with Elon, our legislators will be forced to act. They'll say, "Oh no, we didn't know about that. We
can't hide anymore
about that." And they will. They'll do something then, and we could then potentially have some actual election reform, fix some of these things. So I would say, get Cash and Don Bongino to start a special investigations unit in your state. Reach out to DOJ, say, we need DOJ to investigate our elections. Okay, we know all this money is being spent like crazy, but if you're truly government efficiency, what is the most inefficient thing you can do? Have stolen elections. That's the most inefficient thing you can do. Machines are way more expensive than hand counting. It's been proven. In Arizona, we didn't have results for 3 weeks, so the machines are clearly not faster. Hand counting is much, much faster. It's not efficient. So we need DOJ and we need the FBI, real FBI, to go and investigate, expose this data, pin it to your legislators and say, look, you can't run away from the truth anymore, or we're going to primary you and kick you out. And we need actual election reform. Fix it. If we don't do it in the next 3.5 years, we're going to be right back where we were.
Amen. And so here's what we'll close with then. Joe, I had sent you a link to our Rumble channel, and this is why election integrity is such a loaded topic. And it's not a simple answer. I was on the phone with people today that were like, well, I don't understand how this isn't in this. This is one thing, just one thing that we uncovered over the last 4 years is the reporting process is shrouded in mystery. No one knows when you scan your ballot. Pennsylvania, by and large, has paper ballots already. So yay, paper ballots. Okay, most of the counties have those. The problem is you're sliding it into a tabulator machine that has a computer program on the inside of it, and you have no idea where that vote is actually going. And so we exposed, if Joel's able to pull it up, if you're not, don't worry about it. Follow us on Rumble. This actually, there we go. So stop it for just a second while I talk so I can explain what this is. This is not even on our YouTube channel yet because we weren't on YouTube, got kicked off, but now I probably need to re-put this on YouTube, and I will, but right now it's just on Rumble. So you can follow us, rumble.com/auditthevotepa. This was 2023. We had 4 statewide judge races and we lost them all. Even though we're trending, right? We're registering all these voters. We're trending Republican. Yay, voter registrations. Even today, they're all touting. We're getting more red. Okay, hold on a second there, bucko. This was 2023 reporting night. At 9:46 p.m., you are going to see the top right part of your screen. Those 2 numbers are the in-person votes. This was what the State Department of Pennsylvania was calling in on election night. And you're going to see that red numbered right now, it's 42,698. You're going to see that number go up, and then you're going to see that number come down to the tune of 350,000 votes being removed from the in-person vote total. And it's reflected on the top left of the screen is the total votes. So that's mail ballots and in person as they're being reported. This is real time. My brilliant data analyst scraped the State Department website every 5 minutes to track how it was being reported. The bottom left are just the mail-ins, but I'm going to have Joel play it. You go ahead and play the video and I'll talk through it because I think he even zeroes in. So you're going to look to the top right of your screen, that 500, 70, 600. Look at that red. It's shooting way up, way up. Oh, what happened? This was 9:46 p.m. Oh my goodness. The Republican and the Dem, they're both losing votes. What in the world? It looked like it was going to be a pretty clear win, and whoops, over 300,000 in-person votes removed from the Republican candidate, Carolyn Carluccio. So we reached out to the candidate. Campaign didn't want to touch it. Our state GOP didn't want to touch it. The way this got traction is I spent a week on the phone with my media contacts, and the Gateway Pundit finally wrote an article, and that forced our State Department, our state GOP then was forced to acknowledge it. They exchanged strongly worded letters with the State Department back and forth asking questions. We don't have any answers. It's shrouded in mystery. And here's what's even worse, not doom and gloom, bearer of bad news, but what happened as a result, we didn't get answers. We didn't get answers at all. We public records requests, trying to get log files so we could see what's happening in the cyberspace between the county and the state when the results are actually being transferred. What the heck is happening? That would have answered a lot of stuff, but we couldn't get any answers. And then, oh, hark, Josh Shapiro redoes the entire State Department website. And now we can't write this program and scrape the results every 5 minutes. They've done something to prohibit it. So it gets shrouded more and more mystery, less transparency. Early voting and chasing mail ballots is not going to fix this issue. And like Brian said, if we don't doge and figure out what the frickety frack is going on here, we're going to have 4 years of yay, Trump, yay, and 40 years of tyranny for our kids. And I think he and I both are just not willing to sit back and let that happen. So parting thoughts before, and Joe, I usually end on a funny video just because I like humor. That's how I cope with life when it gets tough. I don't know if we have one or not. If we don't, that's okay. We'll call it a night. Share these clips. Share this, please. I know it was long, share it. You never know who might be paying attention and might just watch a snippet and then start asking some questions and go, they might be the next ones blocked from the Scott Presler blocked list. But Brian, final thoughts. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Brian Ference 1, I think is how.
Correct, at Brian Ference 1, or you can visit brianference.com. I think I linked to my social media there, magamindpodcast.com. Also on brianference.com, if you're interested as a PC, there's a PC tab, and it has a bunch of things on Robert's Rules of Order, tips for PCs, training video. It's basically how you take the power back from the establishment. So I use that tool set, brianference.com, the PC tab. And then on realscottpresler.com, there is a press release page. I would encourage everyone that's kind of a high level overview, but it's written in a press release format. Please do share that with any of your media and press contacts, any newscasters, any news people, because we'd like them to get the message out, to look at the data and really start assessing this. So please do share that, realscottpresler.com, and then press release. Thank you.
And please share out all the Audit the Vote stuff so that we can get a bigger voice and a bigger platform, because like Brian described, since Scott Presler blocked us, actually no, someone else I was on the phone with today, when you get blocked by a big account like that, the new X algorithm actually knocks you down even lower, and so your posts get seen even less, and so we're having to fight extra hard to get some of our stuff seen. So if you haven't shared, follow us on whatever your platform of choice is, and make sure that you're sharing stuff out. That helps us get the word out a ton. So if there's no funny video, Joel, we will call it a night. I will see you guys next Wednesday at 9:00. Brian, stick around backstage. We'll do a little debrief and figure out when we're having you back. But I hope this was helpful. Love you guys, and I'll see you next week. Good night.
Thank you,
Some
Tony.
people
Thanks for
think
having me
that there's like weird beef
we have a
between
fun
us, but I got to say, I love everyone. You know, that's kind of my thing. So that includes you. And I got nothing but love for you, my friend. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. And I have no beef with you. To be honest with you, before you reached out to have me on the podcast, I'd literally never heard of you. So like, why would I have beef with you? It makes no sense.
Totally. Yeah. So wait, did you say you've never heard of me?
Oh, no. I don't mean it in an insulting way. I just mean I don't really listen to podcasts. I'm not on social media. I don't watch much TV. Like a lot of people are talking about White Lotus right now. I have no idea what that is. I don't even know what streamer it's on. Are you an actor? Ooh, are you on White Lotus?
No, I'm not on White Lotus. So wait, so you're saying that over all the years of doing what you do on Easter, which arguably is a bit of a lighter lift than what I had to do, you're saying over all that time you've never once heard mention of Jesus?
No, I know what Cheez-Its are. I love Cheez-Its. Dude, I had a weed gummy on my way over here, and I would crush a box of those right now.
Cheez-Its are great, but that's not... there just aren't that many things that people associate with Easter, you know? There's you, and then there's me. Like... I've heard of you.
Well, yeah, I'm the Easter Bunny. Everyone knows the Easter Bunny.
Oh, boy. Look, I get that you have pagan origins and that you're probably not super familiar with Christianity. That's cool. But you've, like, heard of, I don't know, like, the Bible?
No, of course. That's the band, right? That has the song with the amazing ending. Where no, tears streaming down your face.
So you think the Bible is the band Coldplay?
I'm more of a fan of the early Bible albums, not so much the dance pop thing they've been doing recently. No, thank you.
I'm just going to change the subject. Aside from Easter, what is your, say, second favorite holiday?
Oh, that's easy. You know, the one with, with Santa Claus and the reindeer and the trees and the decorations.
You're messing with me, aren't you?
Yep, because I don't like you. We got beef, brah. You and I, we are not friends. We are enemies.
Oh, that's fine. I love my enemies, so I still love you.
Oh, you are so annoying.
That was a good one, Joel. That was a good one. So ending funny video. We'll get better coordinating this stuff so it's not so awkward. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week at 9:00 Wednesday night. Have a great week.
you. God bless.